when one gets old, as I am, many things begin to disappear. One of them is my voice. So if you may have to amplify this as I go. But I want to deeply thank Steve and the organizers of the conference. As he said, he tried to get me here last year. I do hope the wait is worth it. I've come a long way, maybe not as far as some of you, but I've come a long way from the States, and I bear some bad news. But I also promise to end this talk on a positive note. The bad news is that sustainability, the theme of this conference and many like it, is in need of clarifying, or to be more academic, demystifying. Some 2,500 years ago, Confucius had something to say about the mystification of language. When the master was asked by one of his disciples, what would he do if he were given his own territory to govern, he replied that he would, quote, rectify the names. That is, make words correspond to reality. He explained, and again I'll quote, if the names are not correct, if they do not match realities, language has no object. If language has no object, action becomes impossible, and therefore all human affairs disintegrate and their management becomes pointless. Now, I could stop at that point and say it's all there, but I'm going to go on. He, that is Confucius, would have had a field day rectifying the meaning of sustainability. As used everywhere today, the word has little to do with reality. Our affairs are disintegrating as measured by the ever-increasing unsustainable conditions all around us. And further, it's pointless to attempt to integrate, coordinate, or manage what goes for sustainability today. The very idea that we can continue indefinitely to sustain our life cycle and associated economy is about as far from reality as one can get. The Earth has limits, no matter how hard some technocrats and know-nothings keep trying to deny it. Sustainability is everywhere these days, even in the title of this conference. One speaker's goal was to, quote, improve the sustainability of manufacturing. One of the posters asks, can business be sustainable? Well, the average lifespan of a company on the U.S. In the Standard & Poor's index is about 25 years. So I leave that for you to decide. Business pundits argue that every firm needs a sustainability strategy to prosper. Politicians also call for sustainability, but in this case, it's often about being reelected indefinitely. These and others engage in very sloppy speech habits. The word sustainability is an empty word. Semantically, it has no meaning until what is to be sustained is made explicit. Without a specific reference, the word creates actions to sustain the status quo, or whatever is topmost in the speaker's list of values. In the capitalist modern nations, whether explicit or not, the desideratum is growth, meaning let us act in such a way to ensure that we can continue to grow in revenues or in competitive advantage. This call for sustainability isn't even about keeping everything the same. It calls for sustaining growth indefinitely. Growth is the magic word, even if it is unspoken. It was at one time explicit in the Brundtland definition that got this whole business started. Brundtland said sustainable development is development, but done in a way that the future could share in the same fruits of the earth that we do. Growth, it is said by many, is the answer to human suffering and inequality. But this is far from reality. Growth does lift some out of poverty, but impoverishes others at the same time. Who wins and who loses is still a question. This loosely hidden connection of sustainability to unrealistic growth would be at the top or near the top of Confucius's list of words to rectify. I expect that if I asked everyone in this hall whether indefinite growth were realistic, most would answer no. So if we now know that we cannot continue to keep going and growing as we have, wouldn't it be wise to stop and think of another path to follow in the future? And if we are arrogant or stupid enough to think we can go it alone, keep in mind that 80% of the world's people are trying to reach the same level of affluence and consumption as we have. Maybe we will be smart enough to figure out how to continue using more than one Earth as we are today, but the stark reality facing us is that a whole world as affluent as we are will need 3 or 4 Earths or more. Perhaps we can call up Confucius from the grave to help us. Confucius and many other wise men understood what qualities should be maintained and what words should be used to guide the management of people. All had quite similar views of what constituted a good life. That is, a life that exposed the full potential of human being, verbal, singular, not of human beings, a noun, plural. But it was all about the process of living. Confucius would take special steps to rectify the word being. It does not rightly refer to an object or to a person. It refers to the action of existing, of living. These two words, sustainability and being, are closely connected. All living creatures exist, but only humans be. Being is the act of intentional living, existing but within a meaningful life, and in the case of sustainability, a particular meaningful life, one of caring. Caring is what makes humans distinct from other creatures, except perhaps our primate ancestors. Confucius would correct the current sense of being interpreted as fulfilling our insatiable needs, a worldview that has followed our historical trajectory, especially since the Age of Enlightenment. Given that one Earth is all we have, it behooves all of us to tread on it as lightly as we can. I don't count on planetary exploration as the solution to our dilemma. Treading lightly comes in 2 flavors. One, consuming less and becoming more eco-efficient about making whatever we consume. Given the theme of the conference, I'll certainly speak about the second, eco-efficiency, eco-efficiency, but I'll also spend more time on the first, that is, consuming less. In fact, most of what I'm going to say about eco-efficiency in industry can be captured in just a couple of words. More systemic eco-efficiency is better than less. Full stop. Systemic eco-efficiency is critical. That's where integration comes in. Integration encourages, better requires systems thinking. And this leads me into the main line of my talk today. Let me continue by parsing the theme of the conference, integrating industrial sustainability. The first word, integrating, needs little explanation except to note that it refers to both the physical systems and the human actors involved with them. I'll return to this piece of the theme because the bounds of the system to be integrated are not clear or explicit. The second word, industrial, is also, I think, clear to all here, but needs some qualification for the general public. Industry entails all of the entities involved with winning and converting raw materials into the products that are bought and sold in the marketplace. It's the engine that drives a modern economy, although the financial tycoons of the world might claim that role for themselves. The third word, sustainability, is, as I have already commented, the most problematic of the three. Its meaning is hidden from most of us. The same result arises every time the adjective sustainable is used, as in sustainable development, sustainable communities, sustainable luxury. You figure that one. Or in equivalent grammatical sense, industrial sustainability, as in the title of this conference. Recently, I've come across quite a few articles decrying the use of sustainable or sustainability because they lack specificity and are being used in many unrelated ways. When sustainability is matched with integration, as it is here, the results should be obvious. Integration becomes impossible, or at least terribly problematic. No one really knows what's to be integrated, with a concomitant issue of whose efforts are to be coordinated. In the old English way to describe such situations, we might say that everything is at sixes and sevens, and the world continues to become more unsustainable every year. Global emissions of CO2 rose approximately 80% from 1970 to 2004. In 2012, atmospheric concentrations of CO2 far exceed the natural range of the previous 650,000 years. The first decade of the 21st century was the hottest on record. As a result, extreme weather events in my country, the US, and as I understand here in the UK, have become more frequent and more intense. The US and the eastern US in particular has experienced a significant increase in extreme precipitation events, with the greatest number of episodes taking place during the 2000s. Beyond these environmental issues, we see increasing social pathologies, most notably in income inequality. US Census data for 2010 show the widest income gap between rich and poor on record. In 1968, the top 20% of Americans captured about 7 times the income of those living below the poverty line. By 2010, it had grown to more than 14. This disparity has led to public protests in the United States, as in the Occupy Wall Street movement, and is a strong factor in the Mideast struggles, born out of concern that the institutions of society are no longer adequate or fair. If industry is to contribute to sustainability, several important steps must be taken. First, everyone involved must share the same meaning. Whatever meaning is agreed upon must contain a specific reference to what is to be sustained. Otherwise, all collective efforts will remain uncoordinated. Just as in atrial fibrillation, a condition when the several chambers of the heart stop beating in a coordinated way, life then becomes difficult or even impossible to sustain. I hinted at such a specific formulation above, but let me now put it more directly. I find that sustainability is the possibility that human life and other life will flourish on the planet forever. Simple, concise, and I believe understandable, but also a bit controversial. With that definition in mind, let's re-examine the theme of the conference and of the center sponsoring it. First comes the question, are we flourishing now? Clearly not. Except for a few big bumps along the way, we're richer and own more things, But that does not make and is not making us satisfied with our lives. Only a minority of people respond positively when asked, are they flourishing or thriving or achieving any similar measure of human well-being? In my country, more and more people are locked out of the doorway to upward mobility and seem doomed to live impoverished lives. This strongly suggests that before worrying about keeping something going, we must discover what is preventing the appearance of flourishing today. So here are my thoughts. Our materialistic culture and the industrial system serving it are predicated on a model that ascribes human behavior as driven by insatiable need. It doesn't take a lot of thinking to visualize the impossibility of maintaining such a culture on a finite planet. We can delay the ultimate for a time by the cleverness of our technology, but no amount of eco-efficiency is going to offset the growth demanded by all the nations of the world. If we humans were truly needy at our core, then I believe our lifespan on Earth is limited, but I do not. I believe, based on scientific and philosophical evidence, that our fundamental driver is care, not need. Care is, in this ontological construction of the human being, is not the affective care, say, of the film Love Story, or of the myriad sentimental tales that make up most of literature. The ontological, not the psychological sense of care, is rare in that literature. Care refers to attending to the immediate world that we perceive through our senses, and also what has become stored in our memory. Attention itself is a precursor of care and triggers further cognitive processes ending up as physiological movements. Care is the name given to the overall process of perturbing the brain, bringing something to our conscious attention, and consequently acting intentionally. The specific action we do take may reflect our current emotional state, past experience, and immediate state of our cognitive system, and so is more or less unpredictable. But any such action is a caring action. Our cognitive system is constructed such that we respond in a coordinated fashion to all perturbations from both inner and external sources. We act in this, quote, designed way to maintain the integrity of our whole organism. If we fail to respond in such a way, we risk being unable to survive. Our survival depends in a cognitive sense on attending to, that is, caring about, everything that we encounter, every instance of our conscious lives. For analytic purposes, we can divide up that world into chunks to help us design the way we care. We need different tools to care for ourselves, for other humans, and for all the rest of the non-human world. In any one of these major categories, say ourselves, we need different tools and strategies. For example, to feed our bodies, to fill our brains with learning, to spend our leisure moments, and all of the other major categories of everyday life. So here's some of the good news I promised. A clue to how industry should integrate sustainability. Design and produce products and services to support human caring in place of the present focus on need. How to do this is not so simple because we have served only need for so long that we have forgotten how to design for care. So here's an interesting fact, however. Adam Smith, in his very early writing, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, created the idea of the invisible hand in that book. But he based it on a model of human self-interest as empathy, that is, caring relationships. He thought if people acted out of their empathetic, that is, caring relationships, the whole of society would move toward higher levels of well-being. That empathetic and caring sense got lost, however, when economists appropriated the idea of the invisible hand, replacing care by need. Smith himself got this ball rolling in his later classic, The Wealth of Nations. After understanding the proper role of care, the second thing to understand about sustainability is that it is an emergent property of the very large, complex system called planet Earth. Beauty is a familiar emergent property springing from the intricate interrelationships of the entire object. No paint-by-numbers kit could produce the beauty of an old master's work. Emergent properties are observer-dependent, making quantification problematic. Sustainability as flourishing like beauty emerges only when the whole system is working. Although we see examples of flourishing in isolated ecosystems and in some individuals, we cannot claim that the global system is sustainable when so many continue to suffer. Democratic countries like the UK and the US have asserted that every human being has an intrinsic value and a set of human rights. Further, we cannot talk about sustainability, which concept connotes the persistence of positive qualities when the Earth's life support system is deteriorating increasingly at our hands. The industrial subsystem of the planet is embedded in a larger world with which it exchanges energy and materials. It is run by humans and is influenced by human doings, laws and regulations, demand, the way its outputs are used in practice, and more. We have ignored this fact for several centuries and have treated industry like a machine, producing its outputs with certainty, subject to occasional malfunctions that can be fixed by simple adjustments to the machine. We have actually done much more. Excuse me. Treating the entire socioeconomic system like a machine that occasionally sputters but can be fixed with Band-Aids. But all machines operating in a complex world tend to produce unintended consequences. Energy sources based on fossil fuels have led to global climate change. DDT, considered to be a wonderful pesticide that would eliminate malaria, produced the near extinction of many bird species. CFCs, with properties many times better than the chemicals it replaced, gave us the ozone hole. Free markets, quote, free markets, supposed to be the best arrangement for economic transactions and for allocating scarce resources, also have given us the extreme levels of inequality that plague many nations. Putting these and other similar unintended consequences together, we have gotten unsustainability, an explicit set of human and natural pathologies, and an emergent consciousness that we are doing something very wrong. What's wrong, however, cannot be cured by recycling and other eco-efficient techniques. This basic approach to design and industrial operations is critical, but will not make unsustainability go away and cannot bring flourishing to life. Academics and practitioners designing and integrating industrial systems must take into account from the outset that except for trivial parts, they are working in the arena of complexity. Unknown outcomes will show up. Human errors are inevitable. The high degree of certainty coming from the engineering science base of design is misplaced and occasionally borders on hubris. The focus on Six Sigma, for example, and other attempts to avoid errors needs to be replaced by a design and operational philosophy that anticipates departures from the design set point as inherent properties. My comments following were all anticipated by Steve in his presentation of the Toyota system. Lean manufacturing improves quality and reduces waste of material, space, and work. Customer satisfaction can be improved with modern manufacturing and service systems, but it is all about the wrong kind of satisfaction. Marketers' typical questions ask, for example, how well did the purchase satisfy your expectations and needs? It would not be very difficult to rephrase such surveys to ask instead, how well did the purchase help to take care of one of your key domains of life? For example, your family. The answer to such questions comes not then from some kind of inner psychological process, but by observing the results. A little more good news. An alternative design philosophy does already exist, pragmatism. Arising in the late 19th century in response to the reductionism and intuitionism of Cartesian thinking, pragmatic thinking and methodology is ideally suited to treat complex systems and situations. The existence of unintended consequences is taken for granted. The truth of any moment is taken as contingent and fallible. The inquiry to seek truth is continuous and involves a democratic collective of all interested parties. Applied to the integration of industrial systems, pragmatism argues for participative design, contingent planning, adaptive governance, enhanced monitoring, all features that spring from the basic unknowability of complex systems. One consequence of applying these would be the lessening of the role of short-term profit in both design and integration in favor of a longer-range sustainability perspective. As we heard earlier, the very famous Toyota production system is pragmatic at the core. Now, Steve didn't use those words, but it's clear to me that its philosophic base is pragmatism. It rests on continuous inquiry, a focus on root causes, and broad participation in truth-seeking. Truth is understood as being contingent and fallible. The appearance of unintended consequences or breakdowns is expected. The methodology is designed to make them disappear. When everything is working, quality emerges as if by magic, and so is it with flourishing. If the world system is running rightly, flourishing shows up like magic. Sustainability as flourishing is not something resulting from the mechanistic design of industrial systems. It cannot be produced like widgets. It emerges only when the whole system is working correctly. It arrives when people are satisfactorily taking care of the important domains of their lives. Caring never stops until life itself does, but it does not have the insatiability sense that need carries. It shows up when families and ecosystems are healthy, when learning enables individuals to cope with the uncertainties of life and in many other domains. This should be the goal of the integration of industrial systems for sustainability. Now note that's a very slight but important shift in the title of the conference. And let me end on that note. I will repeat it so I make sure you heard me clearly. Integrating industrial sustainability lacks meaning because the use of sustainability here refers to nothing at all. Confucius warned us about situations like this, saying, as I quoted at the beginning of my talk, all human affairs disintegrate and their management becomes pointless. To avoid this outcome, try this alternative way of expressing the title: the integration of industrial systems for sustainability. The last two speakers stress the importance of sharing a common language if you want collaboration. It was central to Steve's comments on the way Toyota goes about it. And Padmachi stressed how important it is to have a conversation with all of the stakeholders. And those conversations depend on sharing a common language. It was explicitly pointed out by Steve that that's one of the key characteristics of that Toyota production system. In fact, the first or second slide talked about making certain that everybody shared a common language. Now, it'll take some time to agree on just what qualities to sustain. But once you get that agreement, you can proceed with all deliberate speed to integrate industry. And when you get there, if you have focused on care and on complexity, sustainability as flourishing may come forth. Don't be disappointed if it does not the first time. Good pragmatists, like good gardeners, keep on trying until they get the results they seek. So best of luck with your efforts. Thank you for inviting me to Cambridge and for listening to my slightly iconoclastic views. Thanks.